Hi, everyone. It's the Catholic CEO, Henry Katarna. Welcome to our Exemplary Catholic Leaders series. Today, I'm interviewing Cody Frederick, who you're going to see in a second is really a serial entrepreneur. Cody, how are you today?
I'm doing great, Mr. Henry. Thanks for having me on.
Well, you're very welcome. I'm glad to know you and to tell a little bit to our audience about what you do. So, how about we begin with our little short series here that we do. Tell us about the serial entrepreneurship. What exactly do you do? What kind of businesses do you run, Cody?
Primarily for the last 25 years, my life has revolved around some combination of the restaurant business and the real estate business. So a lot of what I do is the interplay between those two things. They really depend on each other in a major way. My professional life started in the restaurant business first. I learned a lot about how that drives what you see in your town. You know, whenever you drive around or walk around in a city, things happen and look a certain way for a reason. So it always fascinated me, and I've been again doing different things on both sides of that equation for about 25 years now.
And when you say you started these, did you buy businesses? Did you start them up yourself? Did you acquire them? Do you have partners? How does that work in your life?
For me, early on, I accidentally, like a lot of people, I got a job at a restaurant my freshman year in university back in Louisiana. And it just so happened to be at a place that eventually became a very big American restaurant chain. At the time, it hadn't happened yet. So I had no delusions or plans. I never worked in a restaurant before. I thought I was going to become a dentist. That's what I was studying in undergrad at the time, microbiology. But then I caught the restaurant bug. So worked as an employee in that company as it grew from, I think we had 4 or 5 locations at that time, and worked with them until there were 50 locations. And then became a franchise partner with that company, moved to Texas, and I've been doing that or had done that from 2007 to 19. So that was my introduction into the business. It was as an employee and an operator. And then kind of doing any job they would let me do. I was very curious about how it all worked. I'd never thought as restaurants as a real business. If that might sound kind of strange, but never thought of it as a real business, just as a thing you did when you needed money. And as I saw that there was a real thing behind it, and Wall Street was beginning to take interest in restaurant companies at that time in the early 2000s, just fascinated me. So I wanted to learn everything I could about it
Mm.
uh, before I had to go home and tell my family, like, by the way, I'm not going to be a dentist anymore. I'm going to go work in a
That's
restaurant.
right. Yeah. Thank you, the bank of mom and dad in my college days. Yeah. No.
Sure.
Well, so Cody, we have at the Catholic CEO, we've had several restaurant clients over the years. We've had some coffee shop people. We have coffee roasters and so on. So let's hold that thought for a second. Let's go to the Catholic faith, though. You are a Catholic, and we've seen each other at Mass, I think. And so, what what's the story of your Catholic faith? Did you grow up Catholic? Did you become Catholic? How does it work in your life?
Cradle Catholic, raised in the Acadiana region of South Louisiana, very strong Acadian French roots there. So quite a bit of our ancestry has ties back up to Nova Scotia. Um, so I would say, yeah, absolutely raised in the faith. It's sort of in the air, the water you swim in there.
Yes.
But I guess lots of places, right? So is the culture is absolutely shot through everywhere with the liturgical calendar, the celebratory calendar, all those kinds of things. My catechism, at least in my my parish, my story, people cared a lot, not a very robust catechism going on there. So I think when I came to confirmation, at least where I grew up, that was sort of junior year of high school. As we became adults in the church, if you will, I didn't know very much about the Catholic Church. I thought I did, but I didn't really understand what it was I was a part of. I think my intuition by that point had been formed enough to know it was deeply important to my family and my community, but I couldn't have answered probably a lot of questions about what was going on there. So, never had like I'm out of here, I'm quitting the church moment. Kind of drifted away as I went to college. Once I left my hometown, and just sort of floated around for some number of years and really got busy with business. I think business just became too much of my life. So I was in and out of going to church sometimes, not all the time. And then I would say 2017 had a thing. had a friend, a tragedy in my friend network that really kind of like shook me to my core at that time, an unexpected loss of a friend. And I was back home actually for his funeral, right? So me and a bunch of buddies that I hadn't seen in a very long time, we were all back home together for the first time in a lot of years. And I sat in parish that I grew up in. It was in the church. It was empty one day. Just sat there for hours, and you know, gear started turning. It's like, what am I doing here? I gotta get my head screwed back on straight. I gotta think clearly here. That started a really quick, I guess maybe you'd call it a reversion. I don't know what the right term is, but I began to really, in earnest, look back at the faith again for the first time, and wanted to dig deep and really fully understand what it was all about. And by that time, I was married, had children, right? So I was thinking, as a dad, I got to get my act in order. I thought I was doing a great job. Um, so it's
Yeah.
really been, yeah, I'd say the last 10 years or less, rediscovering and falling in love with the church in a whole new way. And that's that process that has been building ever since then.
I love to hear that because some people who talk to us about, let's call it a reversion, there's either a moment like you experienced sitting in an empty church for several hours and also reflecting on your fatherhood and you're married and so on. So this is very interesting. So let's translate that then. Your experience in the faith. You're a business guy. You explained to us a little bit about how you run the business. Can you run a business in a Catholic fashion? Now, that's not a test question because we believe that, but what do you say about that? Can you actually do that and run it in a Catholic fashion? Is there such a thing?
I'm convinced there is such a thing. I would say I think in terms of probabilities and percentages, a lot that keeps me from going too insane. Um, so I try to resist the yes or no, up or down categorization. I think it's important to understand, say, if someone already has a business and this concept comes into your mind, you have to think about where you are right now. Just be honest with yourself about how are you already running things? What team do you have? What's your business structure? And then begin to explore, okay, what's the next degree of approximation closer to these values, and realize that you don't have infinite time, but you have time. And as long as you're bound by time and resources and you're busy running a business, there is only so much you could do at a time to begin to orient things in that direction. It's like a big cruise ship or something along those lines. You
Mm.
start to turn it. Um, and I'm a big believer too, and do what's possible now, and then move on to the next thing. I've been guilty in the past of maybe thinking I was more capable in the short term than I really was. Actually, I'm guilty all the time of that. But uh, if you take the long view and you understand the principles and think of them as a foundation that you are building something on, um, do what you can do when you can do it, but just stay relentless and committed to the idea. And over time, the organization does transform. It'll go, what you focus on and what you invest in will bear fruit over time. Key is to
Sure.
don't give up when you get distracted, get back on track. But yeah, that's what I've seen in my business too. I would not go around saying my business is through and through a Catholic business in every single way at this point. But I would say the more that time passes, it's getting closer all the time, in subtle ways and then more overt ways.
Mhm. It's great to hear that because this is a question that many of us Catholic business owners face. Are we a Catholic business selling to Catholics? Not necessarily. We can be a business that is run by Catholics according to Catholic principles, and then we sell to the world out there. But maybe, Cody, what's an example? What did you do? Let's say in a small, subtle way. Could you give us a little taste of what you actually did in your business to make it more, in line with Catholic principles?
I think the one that that really is most visceral for me has to do with just the idea of protecting human dignity. So it's a big idea. And thankfully, I think there's, mentors I've had, people I've worked with whenever I was younger. This was in the air. This was an assumption they had. They didn't articulate it in this way. But I think that there are ways that you could treat the people that are on your team and or your clients, customers, where you draw a bright red line in your company policies or in your interpersonal behavior, that you do not ever undermine the dignity of the person across the table from you, or in our case, outside the drive-through window from you, or um, because a lot of our workforce over the years, I work with a lot of young people.
Hmm.
Like my financial well being has been dependent on like 17-year-olds for a couple of decades now.
Right.
Um, would not recommend to everybody. So it's quite the roller coaster ride. Um, but it taught me a lot about younger people and how particularly fragile they can be to being embarrassed in public, being critiqued in front of their peers, and how a
Mhm.
perfectly good person can shut down on you if they feel like you are going at their core, making them feel less than, things like that. So that's the one that intuitively, for whatever reason, that one fires me up the most. It's like, how can we build policies and procedures and ways of being and how we interact with everybody, whether it's a vendor or a customer or or an employee, which I think of all these people as customers all the time. Like,
Sure.
you're always making some kind of impression on everybody at all times. And it's either going to come back to you in a good way one day or it's going to catch up to you one day. So that's where fundamentally that's a non-negotiable for me. I will never call somebody out in public or things like that. Um, I'll, I'll, I'll be quiet for a minute and wait for the appropriate time
Mhm.
and make sure that person knows, like, I want to solve this so that we both, so the right thing happens.
Mhm.
Hopefully that's not too wordy of an answer, but I try to stay very committed to like, what is the right thing to do? It's not always obvious in every situation what the right thing to do is, but I try to emphasize to that person. I want to figure out what that is with. Now let's go forward from that point. I don't want to try to win an argument. So it's not, is Cody right?
Yeah.
It's what is right. And it puts you in a vulnerable position sometimes because if the other person maybe doesn't have a good faith participation in the process, it won't go great. It's not going to stop me from doing it because I think it all washes out in the end. It really it averages out to be the right thing.
The MBA schools would tell you and me and the others that these are the standard things you're supposed to do, right? You're supposed to treat your customers well, treat your employees well, have dignity, all these things. But it's all destined for, total revenue growth or customer retention and these things like that. But what you're telling us is that that's all true. That's probably going to happen. If your employees love you and respect you more because you're a great employer, well, that's going to translate into customer retention. I suppose they're going to treat the customer better. But the end result or the reason behind that is because it's the right thing to do in the first place because of human dignity. This is interesting.
That's why I love the church's teaching because the church, I'm very convinced the church has just incredibly deep and rich understanding of the human person.
Yes.
So when you scale up and we move the conversation from theology and philosophy, we move towards economics and all these other things. That things like economics or finance or whatever, these are just scoreboards to describe human behavior. So they're it's all the same thing ultimately, and money just happens to be a signal that tells you, you know, am I creating value for person A, B, or C? Or and so it's a way of scoring that idea. At least that's how I think about it. So if and I think this is basically true, not up for dispute. Like most commerce is built around trust, um,
Yeah.
uh, speed. Trust moves things faster.
Yeah.
Things are cheaper and faster when you trust the other person, whether it's a friend of yours or a business partner. Um, and same thing with customers. Customers want to be able to just trust that you're not going to hose them. If they trust you, they just want you to be trustworthy. And same thing with an employee. If we have a tight quarter this quarter, I want them to be able to trust that I'm not going to sort of like make them pay a price while I protect, my comfort. Um,
Your own uses. Yeah.
so I think maybe those are some more particular definitions of whatever I say, do the right thing. All this stuff to me has to do with trust. Like that
Mm.
teenager trust that I would never embarrass them in front of their team members. Yep. Yeah. I think when you can build that, just like in pretty mundane personal relationships, lots of things just go better in life. When you're surrounded with people like that.
Sure. Sure. Understood. So, sometimes people say to me, and maybe they say it to you, what's the point of, helping a Catholic business flourish? Or why should if I look at my parish bulletin and I want to get a plumber, why should I get a Catholic plumber? What would you say to that?
I'd like to start with saying I understand the hesitation if it's there,
True.
right? Because I do think if we drill down, we want to be able to operate on the assumption that let's just say said plumber is a good plumber. like these, like he or
Yes.
she is good at
Yes.
plumbing.
Exactly.
Um,
Yeah.
so I think that's where we can get sometimes into the hang up. It goes back to trust though, right? So
Yes. Yes.
if this plumber is Catholic, but I don't know them, I I don't want to hire them simply because they say they are Catholic, right?
Right.
But I should say it differently. I do want to,
Yeah.
but I want to hire them because they're Catholic, and that raises the odds that they are going to be a trustworthy person who takes care to do quality work at a fair price, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Exactly.
so that's kind of my. I think it is imperative long term, and we had a conversation about this around St. Patrick's Day actually.
Yeah.
Um,
It
I
is.
think it's long term. If you want, this sounds cheesy. If you want to the world to become a better place where you live, which is actually where we can make a difference for real, is we have to be able to identify these people who share these values with us, and we have to help each other to build our ability to help the next level of people. So we can't all be rugged individuals with these shared beliefs that never help each other. That doesn't go
Absolutely.
anywhere. We could be the most holy people in the world, and we will get um, like just bulldozed by other people
Sure.
who coordinate and collaborate better than we do. So
Sure.
that's my first. I know how long I have a
Yeah.
longer answer to that one, but
That's
I
going to
think
be.
it is worthy to look for Catholic owned businesses if you have a need for something. Start there first and at least give them a fair shot at bidding on the job or testing out their product or service.
This is the typical response I give. I can tell you, Cody. I say to people, "Well, give the guy a shot. If he's good, great. If he's no good, well then that's his problem, and so move on." But the good news is that I could get started as well as you on the Catholic economy, which is a larger sort of concept. So, but we won't go there today because we're focusing on your approach to it. Let me ask you, if you're advising other business owners who are Catholics, at the parish, you may have some friends and colleagues that are really running a business. They're Catholics as well. What would you say to them? You've talked a lot about trust today, but what would you say to your friends and associates who are running other kinds of businesses in other fields, let's say, not restaurant food, that sort of thing?
I made some notes on this one. I didn't want to forget some of my
Sure,
ideas.
sure,
Um,
please.
and maybe we've sort of in a way touched on them already. Um, I would say don't be afraid of living out these principles at work.
Mhm.
What's great is Catholic principles are not fundamentally at odds with making your coworkers feel loved, cared for.
Yeah,
They're not at odds with building great long-term relationships with clients, with customers. It's actually, it is a disciplined framework that will accelerate those things. So there are nothing about Catholic principles that mean that you are going to have to live a life that is destitute and you can't succeed and have responsibility. So I would say number one, don't be afraid of living them out. I think be discerning as to when to speak openly about them, so that you don't undermine your ability to evangelize over the long term,
right.
especially in larger
Good idea.
organizations. There are departments that can get you in trouble and all these kinds of other nonsensical things.
Yeah,
But I think be discerning with how you do it, where you do it, but it has to be a conscious process because it won't just happen. It's very important, and it's at least in my experience, there people are really hungry when they see it. They don't know what to call it, but they like it. They like the person who has coherent answers about how to solve problems. They like the person who's optimistic. And for me and lots of us, I mean, it's because we have hope, we have faith. Like we have these things that are in a sense a secret weapon in a lot of environments where people don't seem to have a lot of hope or a lot of faith going on there. I really enjoy being able to bring that to the table. So it's not as though you have to be the weird guy in the office to do these things.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
so that would be number one. The other part of that, I would say, don't be afraid. And maybe this is the next part for young people too. Get over your fear of taking on more responsibility than you have right now. There's no version of reality where the future gets a lot better and more Catholic if Catholics are afraid to be in charge of things.
Mhm.
We have to be able to do a good enough job. Of course, we have to earn these jobs, but don't be afraid to be responsible for things. You're probably not ready, but you'll become ready. Kind of like when you have your first kid. Of course, you're not ready to have your first kid.
Not ready. That's right.
You have
We
to
all know
rise to
that.
the occasion, but you need. We all need forcing functions like that in life, where we kind of maybe we're ready enough to get started. We feel inadequate. Well, you become adequate through the process of doing it. There is no perfect moment before you get started where you're going to be perfectly ready for anything.
Yeah. You're giving good advice to the young person who maybe, is in a business as an employee, wants to maybe move higher and take on more responsibility, or even, I suppose, to start a business and so on. So you're saying to them, try it. How can you give an opportunity for a young person to either learn some leadership skills to move up in the ranks, let's say, or to start a business of their own? What would you say to them? How do you do that? If I'm
Um,
I'm 18 or 21, how am I going to do that, Cody? They'll say to you.
I think the fastest route, the most dependable route is if you're already in an organization, right? You're working for someone right now. There is not, there's a severe undersupply of people who spontaneously ask what else they can do to help, right? The default for all humans, because of aversion of conservation of energy, is I'm going to wait until my boss tells me to do something so that I don't get in trouble. Yeah. Um, so looking for ways to help, looking for ways to go above and beyond happily, like
Mhm. Mhm.
make it into a game. What else can I learn? And everybody has their own ways of doing this. My own kind of personal example. And I'm not going to pretend like I was enlightened about this. Maybe I got dropped on my head whenever I was a kid. So I did this instinctively. My early days at the restaurant, I must have been 20 years old. I met
Mhm.
the founder of the company, who was only 10 years older than me at the time. He was a young guy. I met him and one of the vice presidents of the company one day, and they were visiting. And I asked, I don't know how I got the courage to do this, but I asked the vice president, like, could I go work in your office, like for free? Like, could I get coffee for you or like take meeting notes for you? Because I selfishly wanted to sit in their meetings to see how
Sure.
they
Sure.
talk.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
like,
Brilliant. Yeah.
how do they make decisions? What's going on in these meetings? Because
Mhm.
we would get the directives at the restaurant. I'm like, well, how'd they figure that out? Like, why did they choose to do this or that? Um, and the vice president guy went away, shook my hand, and a couple weeks later, he said, "Hey, were you serious about that?" And I said, "Yeah, absolutely serious about it." And I even told him, I was like, "If I'm bad at it, just fire me. Like, I'll go back to the restaurant. I won't." Um, he gave me a shot, and that changed the trajectory of my life. I mean, if I hadn't done that, I probably wouldn't have owned part of the business in the future. But I got into the rooms, sort of.
Yeah. It's
They
amazing.
never made me get coffee for them. It never actually was like that.
No.
But they would ask me questions. What do you see here? What do you think we should do?
Mhm.
And it trained me how they thought, how they spoke, what their needs were, what their pain points were, and I wanted to make things work better. And it just snowballed over time. So I think taking initiative in terms of how can I add value now, and then trusting that you'll be rewarded eventually for it. And don't get that backwards. I think a lot of young people are, you know, what are you going to pay me so that I do this stuff now? And I get it on one hand, but man, it sure will prevent you from getting in some special
Yeah.
situations
Exactly.
if it's always what can you give me now?
That's right. See, in corporate speak, people would say, okay, that's a mentoring program, or it's, sort of encouraging curiosity on the part. But the point is you're telling young people, have the guts and the courage to step up, do something, demonstrate your skills, and you will be rewarded for it. You will have an opportunity given to you. You took that chance, and it happened to you, and look at where you are today. You've got yourself you're a serial entrepreneur in this business, and because you had the guts at some point to ask that question of that VP. Very interesting. Very interesting. Yeah. So Cody, here we are with the time running. Of course, we could always go on for much longer, and these are very interesting conversations. I'm going to ask you one last thing, which is you're a serial entrepreneur. You probably have several businesses that I know you run. How can we support you? How can our audience, support you? What do you want to promote? Do you want to tell us about something that is near and dear to you that we could help support in your business opportunities?
Wow. Let's see. Well, you might need to live in the Houston, Texas metropolitan area to support
Yeah,
us
sure. Yeah.
directly. This might be a bit of a cheesy answer. I would say I have everything that I want in life. I'm very, very fortunate. Um, Family, business. We own a coffee shop business. It's outside of Houston, Texas. So it'd be tough for probably some of your audience to get out here and buy a cup of coffee. And our real estate portfolio is all centered within the Houston metro area as
Mhm.
well.
Yes.
I'd like to maybe offer. I'm happy to help people. Part of what I do is consult people. I don't promote it but I get a lot of calls. locally from people who, can you help me figure this one problem out? So I kind of enjoy this sort of special forces type approach where every so often there's something I could help someone with. Um, Happy to do that. So if we can maybe give people a way to reach me if they think I could be of service to them. But other than that, this is maybe a greater good, back to Catholic social teaching, stuff like that. Coffee business, the real estate business, the restaurant business, I believe fundamentally they serve that core human need of like belonging somewhere. Or
Yes. Yes.
placemaking is what the urban planners might call it. Um, so if you're not volunteering on a planning and zoning board or an economic development board in your town, or are in some ways helping to guide what gets built in your neighborhood or supporting local businesses in your neighborhood, I'd kind of sort of put the call out to people there. Please look for opportunities to support that in whatever way makes sense for you. In the best cases, like I think maybe we mentioned at the St. Patrick's party there, bind together with people who share your beliefs and don't be afraid to explore investment partnerships with other Catholic business owners or investors and look for ways to actually make what we believe in our hearts and our souls visible in reality. Because so much of what we debate about ideas and beliefs and they're all invisible. Um, but especially at the local level, like the world's super hungry right now to see our beliefs made real through sticks and bricks and paint and
Right.
open signs and things like that. So there is a quasi infinite amount of improvement we could make to local communities if we
Yeah.
begin to focus more intently on that and then come together to do projects together.
Love it. Your, I'm going to put in the show notes with your permission, your email address. Would that be the way to do it? And if somebody really wants to talk to you, you're willing to help talk to somebody about these kind of questions. So that's a very generous offer. Thank you very much for doing that. So Cody Frederick, you're a serial entrepreneur and I know you've got many things to do today and you're going to get back to it. So thanks again for being with us. God bless you and your family and all of your works. And hope to see you again some other time.
All right. Same to you. Thanks so
Thank
much, Mr. Henry.
And God bless everybody too. It's Catholic CEO Henry Katarna. Thanks for being with us today. We'll see you next time.